We're going to talk about the formation of political parties in the United States and why this whole Republican-Democrat debacle is meant to distract you.
So California is going to have a Republican governor. That will happen. That will happen if the votes are split. There are so many candidates for a Democratic governor. I'm not even counting the third-party candidates. California has a two-top primary candidate system. The two candidates that receive the most amount of votes, they face off in November. So yes, if two Republican candidates have the most votes, they will face off with each other. Now, polling numbers are not 100%. And by the way, how polling works really quick is they call, text, whatever, and say, who are you voting for? They sample 1,000 people, maybe 400 respond. So if who you want to vote for is not polling well, but they're still on the ballot and you vote for them, that is a wasted vote. I'm sorry, that's my opinion. If your candidate is not making it, boo-hoo, cry me a river, and just get it done, California, because if not, we're going to have two Republicans against each other.
Yeah, I think everybody is bewildered that while this wasn't a joint NATO operation to bomb Iran, that it was in the general common interest of the West, especially when we learned that they had, we didn't know that they had, after the first bombing, they claimed they had enough for 11 bombs of enriched uranium, and now we know they have a 2,500-mile range for their missiles, which puts, in theory, had we not acted, all of the European capitals under nuclear blackmail. So this was in their interest, not to mention all the terrorism that Iran has sponsored in Europe and the West in general, particularly in the United States. So we didn't expect Spain, Italy, Britain, France either to forbid the use of their bases, their NATO bases, or their airspace, or both. And we didn't expect two-faced comments like the German president, that this is not a legitimate war and things like that. So very quickly we've discussed what is it. Well, they have different agendas than we do. And it's time to admit it. They don't really believe in they don't have a First Amendment. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in the nuclear family and reproduction, so they have a 1.3 fertility rate. They don't believe in the utility of nuclear power other than France and fossil fuels, so they have the highest electricity cost in the West. They don't believe in defense, so until they're bullied and screamed at, and they think they're Greek philosophers and we're their Roman legions to enforce their utopian visions. And, of course, the most important, they have open borders, and they have up to 10 to 15 to 16% of their populations are Muslims, and they're not integrating, they're not assimilating, they're not acculturating. So you put all that together, and that was reflected in their foreign policy. So when they look at the Middle East, the first thing they say is, we don't have any oil, we don't have any military to get it or to allow it, we don't have a stable population that would support us if we were to do it. We don't have many people, young people, to go fight. So we're not going to participate. That's okay, but they shouldn't have denied us, as I said, the use of bases, because they always want us to go in on their shenanigan. Would you please bomb Libya with us? Would you please bomb Milosevic with us? Would you come over to Ukraine? It's not a NATO country, but would you come over and defend it? We don't have enough resources. Would you please help us go into Chad? The French said, we need refueling, we need intelligence. Margaret Thatcher, would you please help us with the Falklands? Please, please. It's always the same old story. And the French, we mentioned that on Sammy's, that there were, I don't know if there was cash money, but there was implicit leverage the Iranians had on the Strait of Hormuz with Europe. And it was basically, we're not going to bother you unless you are antagonistic to our theocracy. And then we may hassle you. They would take those kind of like PT boats, and they would, circle around ships, and they would take hostages. But Iran was okay with countries that appease them, and that's just what's happening now. France just said, well, this is not our war, and we're not going to let you fly over our country, so we're going to get to go in and trade. It'll be better for us anyway, because now we can send stuff to the Middle East. Maybe we'll be the only exporter allowed to do it. And so Trump's attitude is, well, I did the dirty work, as the German president said, and now the Strait of Hormuz is yours. The problem he's having real quickly, Jack, is that he's hemorrhaging on the political aspect of the war because there's the Europeans on the one hand says, and the left says he's a taco. Trump always chickens out, and he won't finish the job. And as sure as the moon comes up, sun comes up, the natural world functions. I guarantee you that if he doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, or there is not a regime change, the left will flip on a dime and say, you didn't finish the job. We told you to do this. And if he wants to do what I just said, it will take 2 or 3 weeks, and they'll say, oh, this is another Vietnam. Why you're dragging out the war? So you can't win politically. But I think his rhetoric and the administration's narratives have to sharpen a little bit. You don't want to say, I want to get out of NATO. You want to present it in a tragic fashion. I don't know what happened to those people. We like them. They're Westerners. We have a common heritage. We're an expression of New World Western civilization. We've helped them in 2 wars. But they're drifting from us. We hope they come back. It's not us that's drifting from the ideals of Western civilization. We're right down the center on it. They're not. And that's expressed in their foreign policy. So we'll do all we can, but we cannot count on these countries in extremis. And why we want to be reciprocal and symmetrical, it makes it almost impossible. So we want to tell you that we're going to be in NATO, but there's going to be new conditions of our membership. We're not going to carry, whether it's the direct budgeting, 16-20% of it, or the indirect cost, patrolling the world for them, and all of the overhead. We're not going to do it anymore unless they step up. And more importantly, we're not going to get involved in any individual European expeditionary gambit. So if you want to go into your former colony in Chad, forget it. We're not going to help you. Yeah. Britain, if Argentina wants to take the Falklands or something like, forget it. We're not going to help you. It's just not going to happen. That's the new terms. And then we might have to strengthen our bilateral relations with particular European nations. Portugal's been really good. They said, yeah, you can use the Azores anytime you want. That's a key base. We got good relations with you. Greece has said, oh, you want a carrier to come down to the Suda Bay near Hanya, and you want to fix it and repair it to get it back in the action? No problem. We're here to help you. So there are European countries, Eastern European more likely, that want to, we could just say, we're still in NATO, but these are the 8 or 9 NATO nations that we have a special relationship with.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, it's pro forma.
Are letting NATO, most of these countries, get away with not fulfilling their defense obligation is essentially underwriting their social policy.
Yes,
to destroy Western civilization.
Yes. And it's even worse than that, because then they make fun of us that we don't have the social policies that they do, and we're greedy and we're capitalist. And yet we don't, thank God, but we don't in part because we're defending them and the West in general. No, when they get a problem, people don't realize that. When they get a problem in the Red Sea and they can't get in there through the Suez Canal, they call us. They can't do anything with the Houthis. When they got a problem with the Strait of Hormuz, when we had the Iran-Iraq war, they called us. Did you flag U.S. tankers? When they have any problem, they call us. But that's not going to continue, I don't think. I would say just about the narrative, I think the administration has to put this context in kind of a sorrowful rather than angry term. They love anger. Mm. Just say, we really want to help you, but, it's kind of like my kids used to go. They have a very wonderful aunt, and she would go out of her way to help them, and they take them up to a lake.
So I'm going to get pretty deep with you guys here, but you can handle it. All those countries that rank in the top 20 happiest countries are all on the spectrum of a democratic socialist country. Everybody gets free health care, free college, livable wages. They get there's all kinds of social programs. If you decide you want to start a family, new mothers and fathers get paid time off for a period of time. And it's so different in those countries because what people pay in taxes, and they do pay higher taxes, it comes back to them as an actual product, something that helps everyone. They get their kids get a high level of education. They get great food being prepared on site by a chef, not all this processed bullshit like we have in the United States. And there's like no wars, there's no conflict. People live happily. They're not targeting gay people or trans people or immigrant people. There's no need to fight because everybody is feeling safe. They're feeling secure. They're not in survival mode. In America, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party constantly have to have us divided. That is why we will never have those things we keep fighting for. We'll never have those things. Because if we finally got those things in America, we wouldn't be so upset and angry and lashing out at other groups of people. We wouldn't be stepping all over the next person, trying to get a piece of something because we're in survival mode. And when you're not doing that, then you don't need two parties. These parties wouldn't exist. And the Republican Party and the Democratic Party know it. They know this. They must always have us fighting and struggling. That's how the billionaires who fund both parties stay in power. What's my point? Vote progressive. Vote for the Democrats who have vowed not to take any money from PACs or special interests. Vote for these progressives who see that same vision. They understand that. And the more we can elect, the closer we're going to get to getting those things. It's going to be hard because the billionaires have a ton of money and it's hard to compete with that. But that's the only way we're going to get peace in this country.
Okay, here we go. Do insurance companies prioritize profit over patient care?
The insurance companies are making tens of billions of dollars every year denying you coverage.
It was like the insurance company telling me my life didn't matter.
Breaking news, the CEO of United Healthcare was shot and killed.
41% of people aged 18 to 29 think the killing was either somewhat or completely acceptable.
Quote, sorry, my sympathy is out of network.
This incident and the reaction to it ought to be a wake-up call to this industry.
Do insurance companies prioritize profit over patient care? I would say no. I think most insurance companies would believe that patient care is very important and optimal patient care is what they're trying to help deliver, and that there are not going to be any profits if they don't take care of the patient. So I would say no, they do not.
Got it. I would say that yes, they do prioritize profit over patient care. And I don't think there's anything wrong with making money in healthcare. When I think about finding the right point of balance, there's been a shift towards profit and away from this autonomous decision-making for patients. I can think of some specific examples where I know what's right for my patient, and I don't even think it's more expensive. But an insurance company has told me, no, you can't do that thing. You can't do that type of breast reconstruction. And in most of those situations, it's really felt like that was about profit. When I look at what's happened over the last 13 years that I've been in practice, insurance companies are making more and more money, and doctors are making less and less. And I see patients experiencing difficulties in getting care.
Well, a lot of responses to that.
All right, everybody, quick civic notes because this is super important in 2026. Everyone talks about the November election. That's no duh. But the real power comes in the primaries, right? And we'll get into the nitty gritty of all of it. Primaries are how we decide who we get to elect in the ballot in November. Each political party holds a primary, and the voters choose their party's candidate. And whoever wins this primary election becomes the Democrat or the Republican that's on the ballot come November. The reason why 2026 is so important is because all 435 seats of Congress are up for re-election, right? In my state, which happens to be Oregon, we will not only elect a senator, but also 6 members of Congress are up for re-election, the governor and the labor commissioner, as well as 15 state senators and 60 state representatives. That means your district can completely change who represents you in Congress, but only if people vote before November. And primaries usually happen between March and June, just depending on the state. Some states have closed primaries, some states have open primaries. The difference is for closed, you have to be registered with the party to vote. The open, you can be independent. You don't have to register one way or the other. And if you happen to think, hey, primaries don't matter that much. If you happen to skip it, you're letting a smaller group of voters decide your options for November. So if you're one of the people that say both candidates suck, this is where you step up. Primaries decide the choices. November decides the winner. Easy peasy. Check your registrations, go to your Google machine and just type in who's up for re-election in my state, and it'll give you a list of everybody that is up for re-election. And again, 2026 is not just another election, it's a full reset of Congress.
America, you're not fighting about immigration, healthcare, taxes, or whatever. You are fighting about whether you're a nation or just a bunch of random people doing whatever you want. And this explains it. A Republican sees a homeless guy and thinks, this guy made bad choices, and choices have consequences. You got what you deserved. I worked for what I have. A Democrat sees the same person and thinks, system failure, we're all one medical bill away from being homeless. We're all connected. We must help each other. Same person, same street corner, but one sees an individual who failed, and the other sees a community that failed. Republicans think, I'm responsible for me and no one else. Democrats think, I have social responsibilities. My actions affect others. And in America, this difference is why you can't talk to half of your family anymore. COVID proved it. Republicans stopped wearing masks. Individual choice, individual risk, individual freedom. Masks protect others, not the one wearing it, so why wear one? Democrats wore masks outdoors even after vaccination because every American's life matters, and masks saves others' lives. Republicans saw masks as control. Democrats saw masks as responsibility. This is the war underneath every political fight. When Republicans defend individual responsibility, they are not being cruel. They believe their freedom ends when the group controls. When Democrats defend collective responsibility, they're not rewarding dependency. They really believe society collapses when people only care about themselves. That's the root of the problem, because life is a balance between these two extremes. And until the Americans realize that, there's no hope for the Americans. Where do you stand? Are you more individualistic or more collective?
The Republican Party is a party of hate. Always was and always will be. At least if you're a Democrat, that's what you believe. But here's a little fun fact, a little history lesson. Who was the president that caused the Trail of Tears? Andrew Jackson, a Democrat. What about the president who threw Japanese in internment camps? Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Democrat. Who was the president that outlawed the KKK? Ulysses S. Grant, a Republican. You know, the Klan, who was started after Reconstruction, formed by Southern Democrats. Ooh, this is a good one. Who was the party that championed for women's rights? Republicans. Did you know Susan B. Anthony was a Republican? I didn't know that. Well, now you know. You know, in 1964, the Democrats opposed the Civil Rights Act? How dare they? Yet it was still able to be passed thanks to House Republicans. Shit, I could do this all night. And of course, the misinformed will deny it and come to my page and leave hateful comments and insults. But I lead with facts. Liberals lead with emotion.
If you vote in California, you need to stick around. Most people have no idea California's voting system works nothing like the rest of the country. And once you understand it, you'll never look at an election the same way. Here's the deal. In most states, it's simple. Democrats vote for their candidate, Republicans vote for theirs. The winners face off in November. Done. Well, California threw that out in 2010. Now, every single candidate, Democrat, Republican, third party, whoever, they all run on the same ballot. You pick one. The top two move on to November, that's it. Doesn't matter what party they're from. This is called a jungle primary or a top two primary. So yeah, November can literally be Democrat versus Democrat. No Republican anywhere on the ballot. That's already happened in real California races. But here's the part that actually matters. You're not just voting for who you like. You're voting for who even gets a shot in November. Think about it this way. Say 3 Democrats and 1 Republican are running. If those 3 Democrats split the vote evenly, that one Republican can slip into the top 2 with way less overall support. Not because they were more popular, just because the other side didn't coordinate. That's not some edge case. That's a real strategic problem every election cycle. So who actually benefits from this system? If you're an independent voter, this was basically built for you. No party registration required. Full access from day one. But if you're a Republican in a deep blue district or a Democrat in a deep red one, your party might not even make it to November. You show up in the fall and you're picking between 2 people you never wanted. Some researchers say this pushes candidates towards the center. Less red meat politics, more appeal to the middle. There's some data backing that up in California state legislature. Others say it slowly kills third parties and leaves voters in November with zero real ideological choice. 2 candidates, same basic worldview, pick one. So does the system work? Depends entirely on who you're asking, because in California, your vote isn't just about picking a winner. It's about deciding who's even allowed to compete, and depending on where you live, your side might not even make it to the final round. That's not a bug in the system. That's exactly how it was designed.
The political divide in the United States is a made-up game for the benefit of the people who make money off of the game. The 2 political parties making tons of money, all your donations and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. The 2 parties, the people get elected in, hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a game. The real political divide in the United States is not between the Republicans and the Democrats. They basically represent the same thing. The real political divide in the United States is between helping people and hurting people. This isn't just some flip thing I came up with. I've been studying this for a long time. I've been writing about it and talking about it. And I think that's the heart of it. There's a group of people in this country who want to help other people. And there's a group of people in this country who want to hurt other people. There's a 1% in this country that just needs to get more. They need to put more money in their pockets. 100 million was nice. Now I need 100 billion. Tomorrow I'm going to need 1 trillion. Whatever I got to do to put 100 trillion in my pocket, if it means hurting a lot of people, that's fine, because the most important thing is what's most important for me. So we've got a political divide in the United States between those who want to help people and those who want to hurt people. And yet we're being led down this path of believing that somehow the divide is between Republicans and Democrats. The truth is, 99% of us in this country want the same thing. And it's time for 99% of us to take the control of our government back.
Today we're diving into the third pillar that shapes the rise and fall of empires: internal division and political polarization. This is part of our mini-series, A New World Order, where we explore the forces that are reshaping global power. And in the US, polarization is at generational highs. We're seeing presidential approval ratings showing gaps of approaching 80 points between both parties, and ideological extremes on both the left and the right are gaining traction. And part of this shift includes the growing influence of Marxist and socialist ideas, especially in debates over things like economic policy, labour, and inequality. And these ideas are reshaping the political discourse, they're challenging traditional norms, and they're pushing new visions for the future, although faulty. Yet, here's the nuance. Despite this ideological shift, the US remains strong and quite assertive abroad. Whether that's dealing from China to Iran to Venezuela, American policy is very active, strategic, and highly engaged. And yes, polarization creates friction, it slows down decision making, it amplifies debates, but it doesn't automatically weaken global influence right away. And what we're seeing is really a society that's wrestling with its priorities. It's debating questions on identity, sovereignty, and security, but it's doing it in the public domain. And the debate can be messy, but it also keeps democracy adaptive, allowing the US to respond to challenges without collapsing. So yes, polarization is real. Yes, new ideological currents like Marxism under the banner of socialism are rising, but the US remains the biggest player on the global stage. And the political discord from within seems chaotic, but the reality is, if you think Trump is responsible for this gap, well, then there's only 2 years left before we go back to some political norm and perhaps even drive a more political center. But overall, this isn't a story of decline. It's more of a story of resilience under pressure. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments and I'll catch you on the next one.
The United States is roughly, this year it will be 250 years old. That is extremely young for a country. Throughout that 250, there's always only been two options. For the majority of that 250, two options have been Democrat and Republican, okay? There was a time period directly after the Civil War. Civil War ended in 1865. There was roughly a decade immediately following called the Reconstruction period. There were some politicians that were referred to as radical Republicans. What the Democrats need to do, essentially, is take the stance of a radical Republican. I swear to Jesus of Nazareth, if I had to point at a time in history where I was like, this is one time where a party in these United States I felt like was doing what it is a radical Republican. Let me explain. Immediately following the Civil War, the Confederacy was coming back to join the Union with its tail between its legs. The Civil War, when the South said, we're not even part of the United States anymore. The radical Republicans essentially were called radical because of their approach to the rejoining of the Confederacy. I do not consider this radical. I consider this adequate punishment and acknowledging of one's sins or one's wrongdoings. This is how the Democratic Party needs to be right now. The radical Republicans look to like Ulysses S. Grant. He would be like the example of the president that was like that, but it was mostly Congress people. The radical Republicans are the reason that the 14th and 15th Amendment were passed. 14th and 15th, which say, if you're born in this country, you're a citizen of this country. Therefore, you have the rights that all other citizens are granted. The radical Republicans sent the military to be stationed in the former Confederate States to guarantee that there was no white terrorism onto black people, many of whom were freed people who were now going to exercise their rights, like going to vote. The radical Republicans said, we need to ensure that. Send the troops. They said, if you were ever in the government of the Confederacy, you will never have a seat in these United States because you committed treason. Because you betrayed the nation. Instead of this weak, like, pussyfooting, you know what I mean? Of like, well, we just need that. Let's all just make nice and da-da-da. You did wrong. Therefore, you will be treated accordingly. This is the way that...
I want to make a distinction here because I think it's important. You can agree or disagree. I don't fucking care. That's life. To me, MAGA and Republicans are two different entities, okay? Don't think it's smart for us Democrats, me included, I've done this before, to loop in Republicans when we're talking about MAGA because there's a big difference. There's some good Republicans. Liz Cheney, Larry Hogan. I see comments sometimes that like Democrats and Republicans need to stop fighting. It's not Republicans, it's MAGA. Okay, they're a cult. Now, if you're a Republican and you did vote for Donald Trump this time around, shame. I'm going to tell you a little story about how my parents met. My parents were both chief of staff of opposite parties. They did the same job, opposite parties. My dad was a Democrat, my mom was a Republican. They started to get to know each other and a romance bloomed. So they would go head to head every day in their jobs and then go out to dinner and have a great time. My mom did eventually become a Democrat because Republicans were doing some shady ass shit and she was like, I'm out of here. That's how it used to be, okay? And then someone named Donald Trump. People say it started with Reagan. I wasn't there, so I can't speak on that. But what I saw is that Donald Trump came and he divided us completely. He came in here and made things so personal by just taking jabs at everybody. Instead of arguing about policy, Donald Trump came in here and called people ugly, fat, supported white supremacists, things that the USA does not stand for. There's a reason why we fight with MAGA, okay? They are brainwashed. We can see it. They blindly follow someone based on what he says. It is so dangerous to our country. That's why people are arguing.
Here
Americans are fleeing the United States. The richer ones are literally buying their way out with golden visas to New Zealand, Portugal, Ireland, anywhere that isn't the USA, and they're citing Donald Trump as the reason. So this is not normal capital flight. This is America's economic elite saying the ship is sinking and they're not going down with it. New Zealand launched a golden visa program in April 2025 to attract wealthy foreign investors. The program requires a minimum investment of 5 million New Zealand dollars, which is about 3 million USD, over 3 years in exchange for residency. In the first 3 months, the program received 189 applications. Just for context, the previous version of the program received 116 applications over 2.5 years. So that is a massive surge here. And 1,833 people have applied total, representing 617 wealthy Americans, which is 40% of all applicants. That is more than double the number from China, which came in second with 309 applicants. So these are not people fleeing poverty or war zones. These are millionaires and billionaires with enough liquid capital to drop 3 million on a second passport. They're choosing to leave the United States, the country that made them rich, because they see something that the rest of us haven't fully processed yet. Stuart Nash, a former New Zealand Labour minister who now runs an immigration consultancy, told The Guardian that, and I'm quoting, nearly everyone who is applying because of the changes they're seeing under the Trump administration. He said, another quote here, we're seeing more people looking for a safe haven than a tax haven, and that's what they have got in New Zealand. Safe haven, not tax haven. These people are not fleeing high taxes. New Zealand has higher taxes than most US states. They're actually fleeing because they no longer believe America is safe or stable. Robbie Paul, CEO of Ice House Ventures in Auckland, told reporters, never in my time in New Zealand did I have an applicant reference Biden or Obama, and then absolutely a lot of references to people's feelings towards MAGA and Trump. So this is a trend. It's not an anomaly. Ireland reported a 50% increase in American passport applications after Trump's 2024 election win. In November 2024 alone, just in that month, about 4,000 Americans submitted Irish passport applications. That's the highest single month total in a decade. Portugal, Spain, Italy, they're all seeing similar patterns. Americans with money are buying backup plans, and they're doing it quietly because openly admitting that you're fleeing the country you built your wealth in just kind of looks bad. But here's what makes this different from past waves of American immigration. These people are not moving for a lifestyle or adventure. They're moving because they've run the numbers and decided the risk of staying outweighs the cost of leaving. When the people who have access to the best financial advisors, the best information, and the most resources start running, everyone else should be paying serious attention. What are they running from? Well, let's just start with the Iran war. It's been 3 weeks with no end in sight. The Pentagon is asking for $200 billion more. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said there is no time frame for ending it. Oil prices are approaching $110 per barrel. The stock market just broke below its 200-day moving average for the first time in almost a year. Analysts are warning of a 10% to 15% correction. The national debt hit $39 trillion and is growing by $1 trillion every 5 months. Switzerland banned weapons exports to the U.S., citing neutrality violations. Spain kicked U.S. military planes out of its bases. These are not normal geopolitical headwinds. This is America isolating itself while simultaneously starting an unwinnable war that is destroying the global economy. The wealthy can see where this goes. The war continues indefinitely. Energy prices stay elevated. Inflation stays high. The Fed cannot cut rates. The stock market crashes. Meanwhile, debt spirals as the government spends $200 billion on a war while tax revenues fall. Social Security becomes insolvent by 2032, sadly. The dollar loses reserve currency status as countries route trade through Europe and China instead. The government cannot borrow cheaply anymore. Either explicit default or hyperinflation. Either way, savings for people get destroyed. That's the scenario wealthy Americans are protecting against. They're not betting that it happens. They're buying insurance in case it does. And the insurance is a foreign passport that lets them relocate their families and assets to a stable democracy with rule of law, functioning institutions, and no involvement in forever wars. New Zealand checks every single box. English speaking, politically stable, beautiful, Lord of the Rings land, far from any conflict zone, except for Mordor, of course, strong legal protection. If America collapses, New Zealand isn't going down with it. The irony is that Trump's own administration is trying to do the same thing in reverse. Trump announced a $1 million gold card visa program designed to attract wealthy foreigners to the United States, pay $1 million plus a $15,000 processing fee, pass a background check, and you get a fast track for permanent residency. It's the exact same model as the golden visas in Europe and New Zealand, selling citizenship to the rich. But But as of early 2026, there are no publicly verified cases of anyone successfully obtaining a gold card. No names disclosed, no approval statistics, no confirmed cases. The program exists on paper but doesn't appear to be functioning. Wealthy Americans are voting with their feet. They're leaving and taking their capital with them. Every $3 million invested in New Zealand is $3 million not invested in the U.S. Every American who relocated stops paying U.S. taxes, stops spending in the U.S. economy, stops employing Americans. Multiply that across hundreds or thousands of families, and you're looking at billions in capital flight and significant brain drain. When the rich start fleeing, it signals that they've lost confidence in the country's future. These are the very people who benefit most from U.S. dominance. They have the most to lose from leaving. If they are willing to pay millions to get out, what do they know that the rest of us don't? The answer is very simple. They know the math doesn't work. The debt is unsustainable. The war is unwinnable. The political system is kind of broken. International alliances are fracturing. The economic model that worked for 80 years, the U.S. military dominance plus dollar reserve status equals cheap borrowing. That all is coming apart. Being wealthy in America doesn't protect you anymore. Being wealthy somewhere else just might. New Zealand is not the only destination. Portugal, Spain, Ireland, UAE, Singapore, Canada, Australia all have golden visa programs targeting high net worth immigrants. The difference now is Americans are applying in record numbers, explicitly citing Trump and political instability. This creates a feedback loop, of course. As wealthy Americans leave, the tax base shrinks, the debt problem worsens, accelerating the crisis that they're escaping. The people with resources to stabilize the economy are using them to abandon it. That is a vote of no confidence. America is becoming a country people leave, not a country people move to anymore. For the first time in modern history, migration patterns for wealthy, educated people are reversing. The American dream, sadly, appears to be dying, is being replaced by the American exodus. If you're smart and have money, you get out before it's too late. If you want to understand how the U.S. global influence connects to dollar dominance, I made a video on the petrodollar system and why it's breaking down right now. When wealthy Americans invest in New Zealand, Portugal, Singapore instead of the U.S., that's capital leaving the dollar system, accelerating the shift already happening because of this war.
We're going to talk about the formation of political parties in the United States and why this whole Republican-Democrat debacle is meant to distract you. So, George Washington actually warned us about political parties before he left office. In his farewell address, he talked about something that they had at the time. They weren't political parties, they were called factions at the time. They were basically groups of people who organized themselves around shared political beliefs, interests, or leaders at the time, and they worked together to gain influence and power. They weren't official parties yet, like I said, but they functioned in a very similar way, and it's what led to the Republican-Democrat bullshit, right? Washington thought that these factions were going to divide us, and they would shift our loyalty away from the country and toward a group. And he warned that when people started identifying with these factions, that they would defend it no matter what, even if it was wrong, and that the leaders of these factions could use that loyalty to manipulate public opinion and maintain their power. It was dangerous. And he thought that these factions would create unnecessary conflict and would make people like us see each other as enemies instead of as fellow citizens. And one of the biggest reasons, this is my bomb drop, you need to listen, was because of the Declaration of Independence and what it says about the role of the people. It says that whenever a government becomes destructive of the rights of the people, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and create a new government that better serves them. Overthrow. It only works if the people are able to recognize something is wrong and come together. But if we're too busy divided into sides, constantly arguing with each other, defending one group and blaming the other and attacking the other group, no, it's the Republicans, no, it's the Democrats, it becomes a lot harder for us to unite around the idea that the government is no longer serving us. We're too busy pointing the finger. And now the issue is that political parties are one of the most dominant forces in American life. They influence how we vote, how we see each other, how we think. The reason they tell you not to vote third party and that a third party vote is a waste of a vote is because if we realize that both major parties, Republican and Democrat, are bought by the same corporations, we would all stop playing their stupid little game and we would vote in a third party and dismantle the system. Oh, who said that? Oh, wasn't me. Wonder who said that.
So guys, I want you to imagine deciding the winner of an election even before most people get to vote. Imagine that scenario. And I can tell you that that is what many Americans are saying that it's happening at the moment, like right now. So my good people, I know you are asking yourselves why the early primaries. Why do you think so? So primaries are basically elections that is meant to choose the party candidates, I mean the representatives of each party, those that are going to represent them in the general elections. So in the United States, some states vote earlier than the others. And I know that, you already had this particular lady talking about something could be happening in another state, or you could totally be voting for different seats in different states without you knowing. Yeah, that's how it works. So, for instance, somebody in Iowa could be voting for something different compared to somebody in New Hampshire. So, actually, the reason as to why I've stated the two states, it's because they both have, or they both get massive influence. So what's the division for, or why do you think the entire story that you're going to talk about is going to focus on division? So we are going to talk about unequal power, because in this case there are few states that they get to shape the entire race from the primaries to the general one. We have very few of them that actually decide, and that's how it's gonna be. And again, you'll get in some instances where voters in states that are going to vote later feel ignored. So in that position, I will say that with the cause of unequal power, then it's going to divide the American people. And again, something else that causes massive division is that candidates get to drop out really early. Like they just introduce themselves and then they do some, they do tell the people, the voters, about their manifesto, and they drop out. So that's the big issue here now, because if someone loses like very early, they tend to also quit extremely early. And of course that means that so many people in America, I mean millions of people, they never get to have a real choice at the end of the day. And something that is plays a major part in politics, it's the media influence and momentum. Remember that if media comes out as they say that they are going to drive this narrative about you or about your party, it has a great impact, because they are the medium of communication. It's the only thing that people get to hear, like what are people saying, and that really affects the outcome. It affects how people think about the entire election. And I can tell you, if media declares a winner like too fast, then that is it, because it's like you've already convinced somebody in the rural parts of America that it's done. And again, public opinions, they use the media to air out their opinions, which later on gets a lot of influence earlier and acceptability earlier. So what do you think that the Americans are saying? Because this particular topic is very important, and of course I can tell you that there are those that are saying that it's unfair, like they feel like their vote don't really matter. But is that the case anyway? And maybe you could tell us in the comment section below. We have others who are saying that when you have early state tests, then candidates are not going to be tested properly. We are not going to know if they really qualify or don't qualify. So this matter, this issue, this concern of testing candidates early is not really nice. And the younger people, the Gen Z, those who want to participate in politics, they feel like they have been left out. These primaries really, they don't really, it's not conducive for them to run for political seats. Anyway, I don't know what you think about that. Probably you could comment also. And if you look at the bigger picture, you know, there is, I don't know if you believe that there is trust in, you know, democracy. I don't know, because, you know, Africa is that part of the world that really invests in democracy. And also, we have political polarization, which keeps getting worse each and every time. And, you know, when people feel that the system is rigged, then, you know, there is nothing else you can do. Trust is eroded, like completely. Anyway, my good people, I don't know if you normally watch the presidential election debates or just any debate around America. You can clearly see that people talk about fairness a lot. That means that, you know, fairness doesn't exist according to them. So of course we have so many people are asking themselves questions about these divisions and why the early primaries. So are early primaries helping democracy, or are they quietly deciding elections before most of American citizens even get to have a say about it? What do you think, anyway, my good people? So thank you so much. If you watched the clip up to this point, I do appreciate your presence here. I'll see you in the next video.